Welcome, everyone. My name is Terry Ross, and I am the director of the Hunter Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. On behalf of the Osiyevskyy School of Business, I warmly welcome you all to Corporate Innovation Day as a part of Innovation Week and Global Entrepreneurship Week. Thank you for joining us today for conversations and insights about innovation within our career organizations. The Hunter Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation believes that our community has unrealized potential for innovative and entrepreneurial thinking skills, and today is a focused effort to work on that. The bottom line is, it's really hard to execute the business model of today, let alone the business model of tomorrow. But that's the reality of our common situation. So let's choose to look at forward to innovating from within as a way of generating new wealth for us all. The Hunter Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation is pleased to partner on today's event with the Global Business Future Initiative, Vijay Govardhan, Platform Calgary, and Edge. Welcome to you all. The University of Calgary gratefully acknowledges that this event is not only being held in cyberspace, but also on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda. The City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Today, Oleks will be exploring major advances in convergence in digital technologies like big data, machine learning, online media, blockchain, Internet of Things, and will concentrate on three major themes: the essence of the fourth industrial revolution and its impact, practical ways to notice the changes and leverage emerging opportunities, and ethical issues raising from the business adoption, or adaptation, I should say, to their reality. Oleks Osiyevskyy is an associate professor of entrepreneurship and innovation and a director of the Global Business Future Initiative at the Osiyevskyy School of Business. In his scholarship, consulting, and executive trading, he concentrates on the problem of achieving and sustaining firm growth and prosperous longevity through engaging in entrepreneurial strategies. So today, it is my great pleasure to welcome Oleks. Oleks, over to you.
Hi everyone. Thank you very much, Terry. Friends, thank you very much for joining us. And today I am going to talk or share some of my views about how our world is changing thanks to fourth industrial revolution. What it means, what does it mean for your company? What does it mean for your career if you are just starting your career, and ethical issues. However, before going to discussions and slides, I would like to ask you a question. If it is possible, can you please turn on your chat on Zoom and take a look at the question, which sounds like that. Do you think that life will go back to normal post-COVID-19? So we all know that we already have 2 vaccines that are almost ready for deployment. We all know that probably in a year, all these pandemics will be over. How do you think? Will we get back to what we used to? Yes or no? Please don't answer immediately. And also, what do you think might change? Maybe 1 or 2 words. If it is possible, I would like you to answer in chat. Let's wait 1 minute, and then you can hit enter, or you can hit enter immediately, because we will see what the audience thinks.
I'm seeing a lot of short answers about things not going back to a lot of no's. I'd also encourage the audience to add a little bit more context. What do you think is going to change?
I really like this idea of going back to normal, so that we will not get back to normal, but rather we will shape our new reality. Okay, let's talk more about it. And I will start sharing my slides here. Thriving in the fourth industrial revolution, achieving corporate longevity and prosperity in new economic order. What does it mean for you? And I deliberately started with this question about COVID because I believe COVID and current pandemics simply accelerated trends that have been going on for a while. They were put on steroids to turbocharge, but at the end of the day, the life will change dramatically. In the next couple of years, and then in the next 10 years, we will see a major change, something that our generation didn't experience before. So what is the fourth industrial revolution? Of course, this is a buzzword, and we have been hearing it for a while. But this particular buzzword has deep meaning in it. An industrial revolution is Formally, it is a convergence of a set of technologies that substantively change the way we produce things, the way we consume things, and the way our society is organized. If you read Karl Marx a lot, his book on capital, the whole driving force for capital and change was the first industrial revolution, moving from agricultural production to manufacturing, emergence of labor class, when a new industrial revolution changed the way the society is organized. The word fourth industrial revolution was coined by Klaus Schwab, the founder of World Economic Forum in Davos around 2015. And this is how he discussed it. So first industrial revolution is happening from 1760s to 1830s. It started by mechanization of Britain's textile industry and then moved to North America. It was all about moving from hand power to water and steam power, manufacturing, factory systems, emergence of actually labor class that Karl Marx was discussing so much. Second industrial revolution happening 1870s to 1930s. It is all about emergence of electric power and change the way we organize manufacturing, mass production, standardization, globalization, even air travel, highway systems. All of them emerged during this second industrial revolution that substantively improved the quality of life of humans in developed nations and simultaneously changed the way we do business. Third industrial revolution, which is much closer to us, starting from 1950s, and it is still ongoing. It is all related to electronics, information technology, computers, automation of manufacturing. So we need less and less humans to run our factories. And finally, fourth industrial revolution. So fourth industrial revolution is formally, it is the advancement of internet, digital integration into mechanical infrastructure. But what does it actually mean? It means that a set of technologies are leading to convergence of physical, social, biological, and digital worlds. This is the first time when we have digital sensors and connect to internet all our home devices. And they generate all the data and they should improve our life. They lead to emergence of new business models. This is the first time where biological world can be connected to, for example, electrical world, and all of this can be connected to internet. Usually by fourth industrial revolution, people mean convergence of about 9 technologies like Internet of Things, which generates lots of data, big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented and virtual reality, additive manufacturing. In its simple form, it is 3D printing, nanotechnology, biotechnology, neurotechnology. And you see, each of these particular technologies does not change the life. So if we are thinking about blockchain, we had so much expectations, or at least a lot of experts had so many expectations about how blockchain technologies are going to change industries. Well, those technologies didn't. But once you start uniting blockchain technologies with, for example, internet and with fintech business models, now you're seeing the emergence of whole new ways of value creation and whole new markets. So fourth industrial revolution is here to stay, and COVID simply accelerated these processes. Things like fully automated manufacturing, something that was not possible before. Now we can have plants that don't need lighting, for example, because they are run by robots. All these AAS, manufacturing as service, platform as service, infrastructure as service, software as service, all of these things are brainchilds and products of fourth industrial revolution. Even in interacting with our customers, artificial intelligence, kiosks, chatbots, right now they are not that nice. So if you are calling to your, for example, internet company and first you are talking to chatbot, it is not the most pleasant experience, and you try to get to a live operator. But with time, those chatbots will actually become much more advanced, and they will be able to solve most of the customers' problems without engagement of a physical salesperson or service person. This gets me to the first part of set of ideas that I would like to discuss. And this set of ideas is about the new economic order. The world is going to change. How or what will the world look like after COVID-19? Well, First thing that immediately comes to mind is, at least comes to my mind, is that global trade is in danger. So it is not just between the United States and China and disruption of flows of goods, but also between their old-time allies or friends like Canada, United States and European Union. Our soldiers were fighting in the same wars in 1940s, and now this all seems to be collapsing, particularly when we had issues with supply of personal protective equipment and medical supplies during early days of COVID. After that, a lot of nations, including Canada, are thinking about the need to produce most of the things internally, at least the critical things. So on the surface, global trade is in danger, and I don't believe that it will bounce back fully as before. But this time is indeed different. And global trade is in danger not only because of pandemics and disruption of global supply chains, but because of the way we start producing the things. There is another fancy term called Industry 4.0. It was coined around 2011 in Germany when they were developing their new manufacturing strategy. And they called it Industry 4.0 or smart manufacturing. This is convergence of technologies that things like intelligent manufacturing, cloud computing, which allows to track all the data, additive manufacturing, industrial Internet of Things, predictive analytics, all of these technologies, when applied to manufacturing, and we see this more and more often, lead to a bunch of interesting outcomes. Flexibility. Now you can adjust your manufacturing facility very quickly, as quickly as it was not possible before. You can get to market faster, you become more efficient, and you become more reliable. All of these things lead to a couple of interesting higher level outcomes. First is mass customization. Generally speaking, the mass customization is contradiction in terms. Either you're producing something mass and or standardized things for everyone cheaply, or you're customizing it. Right now, we can start talking seriously about mass customization when every customer is getting what he or she wants and at the price as if the thing that you're producing was mass produced. Also, particularly important for Canada, local production. The comparative advantage of China, cheap labor and scale of their manufacturing facilities are becoming less and less important as we are moving towards the era of Industry 4.0. And we can reasonably talk about local production. Of course, we will start with, for example, critical things like medical equipment to make sure that if we have the pandemics next time, we have this critical equipment and personal protective equipment produced at home. But later, this will move to other areas and to other industries. If your plant is run by robots, you really don't care about what is the salary of a labor employee in China versus in Canada. It will be run by robots anyway. Everything will be produced by robots, and it really does not matter. There is no reason why we cannot assemble our computers here, or there is no reason why we cannot produce other consumer goods here. Why do we have to ship them overseas? But also it leads to local market orientation. We will produce the things internally and we will sell the things for internal market. And thanks to speed to market, we will be able to respond to consumer demand immediately, and we will be able to address this demand within a week, for example. Right now, this mass customization is already noticeable in fashion items. For example, a known case is Zara, producer of fashion items in Europe. They are ready to get, well, at least they claim that they are ready to get, once their designers notice a change in consumer tastes, they are able to get the new fashion things on the shelves within 2 or 3 weeks. Because they are producing them locally. If they were producing them in China, it would take them months and months to achieve the same result. Local market orientation is here to stay, and this actually gives hope with respect to diversification of Canadian economy. I believe it will happen much easier, particularly Alberta economy. It will happen much easier and smoothly than most of us expect. So, post-COVID world order is going to be different, but I believe there is a lot of hope that it will actually be much better. One of the things that we will stop seeing is when the stuff is produced somewhere in Southeast Asia and then shipped through the whole world back to North America or to Europe, there will simply be no reason for organizing your supply chain in the following way. Instead, I expect a lot of smaller local manufacturing hubs and that concentrate on local markets. And for that matter, it also means that China will have to work on developing their own market for their products, because there is a chance that their export will not be needed as it is needed right now. A couple of major trends in demand that I would like to notice with respect to consumer expectations and enhancement of products and services. Consumers. Mass customization is here to stay. So if 10 years ago I would buy standard set of golf clubs and only rich people would be able to tailor golf clubs for them, today I actually expect to get golf clubs that are tailored to me from day one, and at the price of mass-produced golf clubs of standard size. This will move sporting goods, fashion industry, but it will slowly move to other industries. But also we have to understand, consumers expect more and more transparency. They actually want to understand who produced the stuff, was it produced in an ethical manner, were the employees treated respectfully and equally as according to the demands of the Western world. So this is here to stay. And if you're producing something right now, you have to keep this in mind, and probably you already know about it. And you have to increase your customers as much as possible in development, because mass customization means that you have to get customers on board when developing your products or services. Also, right now, we have to start thinking, or we have to think even more about enhancing of products or services with digital capabilities. Internet of Things is not just a buzzword. It simply means that every device, every product has to be somehow connected to internet. So right now, when I'm buying heater for my house, I already am looking for something that I can control from my iPhone. Or coffee maker. My wife recently bought a coffee maker that I have to wake up and push a button, and I'm quite upset about it because I want to wake up and push a button on my iPhone. This is here to stay. This is how consumer expectations are moving. And other thing, unbundling and disintermediation. For example, let's talk about university professors. If you want to get right now a university course, for example, you have to pay, you have to get the whole bundle. You have to pay for the university facilities, sport facilities, libraries. You have to pay for the education of your professor. You have to pay for research activities of the professor, for the offices, all of these things. New business models allow you to pay just for the knowledge that you need. That's why those massive open online courses on Coursera, edX are so popular and gaining popularity. This is unbundling. Customers want to get only the particular part of the product or service that they need, leaving everything else aside. This actually has a lot of implications for established industries like education that require long discussion about how to adjust to this new reality. But unbundling is here to stay, so as disintermediation. Okay, so this is general discussion. This was general discussion about new economic order and what to think or wait for. But what does it mean for your business? Or what does it mean for a young person who is just graduating and thinking about what to do in the future? Well, we see a lot of changes in business models. The most prominent and noticeable change is obviously asset-light platforms, platforms that have huge capitalization, that control the whole market without keeping the assets actually on their balance sheets. So, of course, Uber or Airbnb comes to mind, but probably more recent example is the largest in the world suspended IPO of the Ant Group in China. If you're watching that case, that Ant Group is an excellent fintech company started by Jack Ma. The whole idea of Ant Group's platform is that it is a system for payment and for borrowing and lending through this application. And what's interesting, they are already controlling a huge chunk of their credit market in China, but at the same time, 98% of their assets, loans, are out of their balance sheets. They are working as mediators between banks and end users. So we have almost a bank or company that is doing what typical banks are doing, but this company doesn't own any assets, or only 2% of their balance sheets are actually their assets. Everything else is off balance sheets. Also, emergence of freemium business models. This is the child of fourth industrial revolution. Back in 1970s, 1980s, you couldn't come to, for example, Toyota and say, can I get Corolla for free and charge customers for Toyota Camrys much more to compensate for all free Toyota Corollas. It is something that happens only in the digital world, when most of our services we can actually get for free. Mass customization, local manufacturing, we already discussed it. But if you're thinking right now about producing things, the most obvious way to produce things is to find a contractor in China. But maybe 5 years down the road, this will not be viable anymore, and you will have to produce the stuff internally in order to respond to consumer demand as fast as possible. Localization of supply chains and all this software as service, manufacturing as service, and infrastructure as service. Particularly important thing here. When I started my own business about 20 years ago, it was a simple website, multi-sided platform that linked together buyers and sellers in a particular market. I had to buy a server. I had to install operating system on a server. I had to get internet connection through an expensive channel. I had to do a lot of upfront investments to start a simple website. These days, thanks to, for example, infrastructure as service like Amazon's cloud services, you don't have to make these upfront investments. It is way easier to start a company and to scale up the business. That's why, for example, Zoom was able to respond to change in consumer demand because of COVID and to increase their capacity so quickly because of this infrastructure as service that you can use right now as entrepreneur. Also, we have to talk about some challenges. First, by the way, thank you so much for answering that question about post-COVID world. A lot of responses were related to remote work. Remote work is here to stay. Some of us hate it, some of us like it, but at the end of the day, COVID forced us to see that it can be a viable option. And we are not going to get back to pre-COVID times. There is a chance that downtown offices are not going to be fully occupied as they were fully occupied before. Remote work is here to stay. Price of real estate in suburbia is probably going to rise. On the other hand, price of downtown estate is under threat. Second thing, diverse global workforce. Because of remote work, there is no need to tap only into local talent supply, but on the other hand, you have new challenges with managing this global workforce. And finally, gig economy dominated by artificial intelligence. This is particularly interesting thing. Artificial intelligence had to be our servant. It had to help people to make the decisions. It had to help physicians to make proper assessment and diagnostics. But instead, in gig economy, artificial intelligence starts controlling the humans. If you're an Uber driver, the system determines what kind of rides you're going to do. If you are a warehouse worker at Amazon, it is the artificial intelligence systems that determines those bracelets, that determine when you rest, that determine how productive you are going to be and what you're going to do. Artificial intelligence is becoming managers in many industries, and it gets a little bit scary. Now, challenges. So challenges for your organization. If you're a business leader right now, you are bombarded with information about this going to disrupt your whole industry. How to figure out which threats are actually threats, which are opportunities, which kind of things you have to respond to, and which can you safely ignore. Rapid pace of innovation, disruption of existing paradigms, it all happens. How to figure out what's going on? And I have some answers. And of course, it requires longer discussion and longer, for example, executive training sessions. But I will give some answers. But before that, let's also talk about opportunities. Not everything is so bad with fourth industrial revolution. First, lower barriers to capital and market. It gets easier to raise money. It gets easier to scale up your business, as we have already discussed. Second, improvement of your products and services thanks to digital systems allows you to create more value for customers and allows you to charge higher prices and appropriate part of this new value for your company. Plus, if you're open to new ideas, at the end of the day, these are not threats. These changes with industrial revolutions, they are major, but they don't happen overnight. Unlike COVID pandemics, these things, you still have time to adjust. Now, what exactly can you do? What are the broad things that you can do right now in order to get yourself ready for the fourth industrial revolution? Well, first and foremost, don't ignore the emerging technologies. Keep an eye on emerging technologies because some of them, most of them don't, but some of them have a chance to disrupt your business model, to disrupt the way you're doing business. Also, they create major opportunities for you, but you have to be aware of them. Make sure that analysis of emerging technologies is incorporated in your strategic planning process. This is actually one of the most funniest part of strategic planning. Strategic planning is never a fun process, but if you devote half a day, for example, for brainstorming and analysis of how technologies can affect your business, this is what actually gets a lot of interest and attention from participants of strategic sessions. There are lots of sources of information about emerging technologies. The most common source is Gartner Institute and so-called Gartner chart. Gartner chart, so they put the emerging technologies on a chart, and so this chart has certain features, but at the end of the day, I usually use this chart as a source of ideas. What kind of new things are emerging that can change my business or that can change your business? We do this when we do executive training, we do this when I teach my MBA students, we do this when we are doing strategy sessions. We are looking at these technologies on Gartner chart and we are brainstorming about how they can affect our business. You don't have to use a Gartner chart. There are lots of other information. Even popular business press like Forbes, they publish 7 business technology things. Keep an eye on them. Make sure that you have institutionalized process of keeping an eye on emerging technologies. But what to do with them? There are lots of great books that talk about how to deal with particular technologies, how to deal with machine learning, for example, or how to deal with predictive analytics, how to incorporate them meaningfully into your business. And we can discuss this for a long time. But all of them ultimately boil down to a simple rule. The simple rule is the following. Technology does not create value in itself. General purpose technology, and that's why, by the way, government usually has to step in order to fund the development of general purpose technologies. They don't create value themselves. They create value only if they are embedded in new products or new processes. But in order to embed them in new products or new processes within your company, you have to see which problem they can solve. Can they solve new customer problems? So can, for example, predictive analytics solve new problems for our customers and we can sell more or we can sell better? Do they solve existing customer problems better? Can you improve your market share with this technology? Or ultimately, some technologies can make the delivery, can make our operations more efficient. If there is no positive answer to one of those 3 questions, probably you can let the technology go and look for other technologies. When you organize such a session, you also have to make sure that the discussion is framed as opportunities, not threats. Let's not think about how to defend our business model from this technology. Instead, you have to think about how you can leverage this technology in order to grow your business. Let's look at university example. Instead of thinking about how to defend us from online education or massive open online courses, let's think about how we can actually solve new customer problems or improve our students' experience with these online things. It has to be framed as an opportunity rather than a threat. Analysis of new technologies is not risk management. It is the strategic process of finding new opportunities. Finally, make sure that analysis of emerging technologies and thinking about how they can leverage your business, how can they improve your business, has to be incorporated into your strategic planning or operational planning cycle. At the end of the day, most of the planning happens in a cyclical manner when we understand what we did right and wrong, scan the environment, articulate possible ways to grow, test hypotheses, choose what we are going to do, commit budget resources, and then execute this strategy. There are different words for this process. There are different approaches, but at the end of the day, it is all about cyclical process of organizational learning, getting feedback from environment, and implementing new strategies. Make sure that technology fits straight into this process. Make sure that analysis of new technologies is an integral part of your strategic planning, whether you are running a startup or whether, particularly when you are running a large company. Again, of course, this requires longer discussion, but I would like to talk about a general principle about how to make choices about technologies. So at the end of the day, your company creates value in a market economy through satisfying your customers, through making sure that customers' willingness to pay, the value that customers are getting is higher than the price that you are charging. This means that you're creating customer value. At the same time, you have to make sure that the price that you are charging is above your costs. It means that you're creating value for your company. So technologies have to affect either customers' willingness to pay or price that you can charge or input costs, or all at once. And this is where I really need to mention a great book by a top thinker from Canada, from our top Canadian thinker, Michael Rayner, and his colleague, Mumtaz Ahmed, that in 2013 made a really sophisticated investigation of great companies. And they formulated 3 simple rules about how successful companies are thinking. I believe this is totally applicable to thinking about new technologies of fourth industrial revolution. First, better before cheaper. Try to increase customers' willingness to pay, trying to increase customer value first, rather than trying to reduce the price. If there is a way, if a technology can affect price or willingness to pay, it should affect willingness to pay. Second, revenue comes before cost. You cannot cut your costs into prosperity. If there is a way to increase revenue rather than to cut costs, you have to implement this technology. And their third rule is actually quite good. There are no other rules. So these 2 rules, you have to follow them in any situation. And there is good empirical evidence that this is a sound advice. So again, what to do now? What to do in your business? It is a longer discussion, but the general principles are here. Analyze technologies, don't miss them. Think about how to incorporate them in your business by solving customers' problems or by making your own company more efficient. Technology for the sake of technology doesn't make sense. We have to, so for example, right now we are using Zoom for this particular talk. We have other options of using alternative webinar technologies. But at the end of the day, before switching from Zoom to something else, we have to decide whether it will create more value for customers, whether it will allow us to generate more revenues, well, probably not really, and whether it can reduce our costs. At the end of the day, if we don't have positive answer to any of those questions, then there is no need to switch from Zoom to anything else. And the last part of my discussion, I deliberately would like to have this lecture relatively short because I would like to engage in questions and answers. But there is something I cannot simply ignore. Ethical considerations of the technologies of fourth industrial revolution. On the one hand, as with all industrial revolutions, we have a lot of optimism. The technologies allow more freedom and opportunities to live the lives that we want to. They emancipate us. They give us more freedom, which is always a good thing. Fourth industrial revolution, if you have to apply these technologies somewhere, you have to start with healthcare. We will get better health outcomes. Precision medicine is already something that we are already implementing. So every patient will get the treatment plan that is tailored to him or her, rather than that works on a general population. There are lots of great things that might happen. Higher levels of education. Education becomes more accessible to everyone who could not get it in the past. Fourth industrial revolution will lead to safer and ideally more engaging jobs and overall rising of living standards. But this will not happen automatically. Karl Marx was wrong in one thing. Karl Marx thought that technology emerges in itself. It is something exogenous to the system that entrepreneurs cannot really shape. This technology, first industrial revolution in his case, came and changed the way society is organized, and there was nothing we can do about it. This is actually not correct. It is the entrepreneurs today who are shaping the way fourth industrial revolution will continue to progress. There are a lot of risks that it might create. Things like inequality and social tensions. We already know that the benefits of fourth industrial revolution are not equally distributed, and we might get to serious issues with concentration of capital and monopolistic power in small number of individuals and small number of organizations. There are good reasons why they are aggregating monopolistic power. Google is indeed better than everyone else in search, or is one of the best in the search market. But at the end of the day, this creates a lot of risks for the future. Rising monopoly power is something I probably have to acknowledge here. I was born in Soviet Union, and after that time, I have deep concerns about all left ideas. So I am all for free market and individual choice. But this is the case where I actually have to say that we have to think about monopolies right now. If the fruits of fourth industrial revolution are not improving the living standards of everyone, this will break the social fabric of our society. The society might collapse and we will get next revolution, something that nobody really wants. Now, unemployment and insecurity. Of course, a lot of people will see that their skills are not suited for the fourth industrial revolution. And we have to find ways to help those people. In the long run, everyone will be better off, but in the short run, a lot of people might lose their jobs that might never come back. Collapsing identities and communities. As we already know about social media and social networks, the artificial intelligence mechanisms feed to us the news that we are likely to respond to, which leads to polarization of society, which leads to people not hearing the other opinion. This never was an issue before, now it is a major issue. And finally, geopolitical destabilization. If, for example, China cannot develop the internal market for their huge manufacturing machine, this can lead to destabilization of the whole geoeconomy. We have to make sure that this development is happening in such a way that every country is getting something out of it. If because of renewable energy development, the oil is not needed anymore, a lot of petrostates are going to be in trouble, and this is not going to lead to anything good for world as a whole. So we are right now at critical junction. We as entrepreneurs are shaping the way fourth industrial revolution is developing. I have a lot of hope in humanity, even though history teaches us that a lot of bad things might also happen. But this is the time where our human agency can make sure that the life of next generations will be even better than our lives. And this gets me to the end of my presentation. I would like to acknowledge that this presentation was prepared in collaboration with our Executive Education and Global Business Futures Initiative. And now it is time to get to some questions. Terry, over to you.
Thank you, Oleks. Now, yes, I'd like to open up the floor, if you will, to the audience who can ask questions to Oleks or observations either through the chat. But it would be nice to also see some people's faces. If you wanted to turn off your camera and ask a question directly to Oleks, we do have that ability now. So does anybody have a question about the fourth industrial revolution or any of Oleks's topics that they'd like to bring forward?
And Terry, we already have some questions in the chat. So if it is possible, let me take the first question, and then you will manage this process. So first technical question, yes, we will make the slides available and we will make this recording available after the session. So please feel free to share it, use it as you see fit. Now, sophisticated question from Ron. Are ethical considerations affected by cultural dynamics If so, an appreciation of cultural environment for good services might be important. It was sent to me privately, so it is not visible to everyone. Yes, short answer, yes. Of course, our ethics is shaped by the way we grew up, by the way we were educated, and also by actual evolutionary process that we as human sapiens went through. So yes, they are, but they don't determine fully everything. We can think right now, and this is the right time to think about how we want to see the future for our kids, how we want to see the future for Canada or for humanity as a whole. And some general principles are applicable in any situation. So for example, technology has to empower people rather than to take away the power. So if artificial intelligence is controlling our workers, this is concerning. If artificial intelligence is giving more freedom and emancipating our workers, this is usually much better approach. And some other principles, of course, as usual, this is long discussion, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Alex, I got a question for you, if I may. How long do you think this will take for these changes to start impacting businesses and society in a meaningful, significant way?
Well, first, I believe that once COVID vaccines are available to everyone and COVID is done, we will not get back to normal. Yes, we will go to our offices more often, our kids will safely go to school, but a lot of things will change right now. Remote work, gig economy, and particularly the localization of manufacturing. I believe that in Canada, we have to start with producing medical equipment, for example, ourselves. We can treat this as a strategic investment, but at the end of the day, we will not lose too much in terms of efficiency as compared to importing this equipment from overseas. I believe that we will see the first changes right after COVID, but in about 10 years, it might change. We will see the major changes already. So if you're thinking, my daughter right now is 11, so 7 years down the road, she will have to think about college. I believe that 7 years down the road, the pathway to college and specialization will be different from what she would choose right now. By the way, one more thing. So I showed the picture that with this large container ship that it will not happen anymore. There are some things that are still going to be shipped, particularly oil and other energy sources or metals, for example. We will still have to ship them because they cannot be locally produced. So for Alberta particularly, I believe that good days are still going to come. With respect to everything else, the situation will change dramatically in 10 years. That's my most likely I will not, there is a good chance that I will not be able to retire as a university professor, as 30 years down the road, there might be different way we run our universities and different things that professors are doing.
We count on it, absolutely. I got another question.
To make a question?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
Congratulations for the presentation, it was amazing. I just want to ask something from the business perspective. You talking about the new industrial revolution that is coming and all the stuff, where the universities and the academic world can help for the change that you brought as an example for your daughter and my kid were, let's say, they're in the same age, where the academic community and the universities, because we know from the business perspective and the market that there's a small gap. And we're fortunate here in Calgary and in Canada that that gap is not so big because there's a big synergy between the market and the universities. But where the academic world and community can assist and the new era that is coming to the new workers or the new people that they want to create businesses will reduce that danger and that fear of the new technology that is coming. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that's a perfect question. And that's a very legitimate question. As educators, we have the responsibility to make sure that our graduates are well prepared for this new reality. I can say that we have a lot of discussions, at least within a business school, about what are the new skills that our graduates will need. Things like how to thrive in the digital technology. this is actually a moral imperative. These discussions have to happen within universities. On a positive note, university as a system has been around for 500 years, and I believe it will still be around for the next 500 years. There are good reasons why we need this accumulation of knowledge, thought leadership, young people coming in, getting out, getting back to the university. So as a system, it creates a lot of value, but definitely we will have to reinvent ourselves. From this perspective, so short answer, universities have to lead the way in terms of educating the new workers. But from a pragmatic manner, I believe that universities have to be incentivized a little bit more to respond to market demands. We have to be responsible for our graduates finding jobs. We also have to be responsible for making sure that we have enough students coming in that will get jobs in the future. So from this perspective, I would be, for instance, very, very careful about government subsidizing of universities. I know that this is a very question that requires a lot of debates and discussions, but I believe universities have to rely a lot on tuition fees in order to make sure that their primary customer is a student or a graduate, rather than, for example, the government. Well, yeah, probably this is where I will have to stop.
Got a couple of really interesting questions to unpack here in the chat. So thank you for everybody who's putting the questions in there. Please do continue. Question about the liability of newness. There's always a risk when you're sort of being one of the first to adopt new things in some ways, and they can be, sometimes companies might move too fast. What are the risks of the fourth industrial revolution, and how do firms avoid that risk?
Well, there is a simple answer, and the simple answer here is, what is entrepreneurship in general? Entrepreneurship is not new venturing. Entrepreneurship is not about starting the next Google. Entrepreneurship is about noticing real-world problems and finding innovative solutions to these real-world problems. So I was an engineer, and my engineering mindset was always build it and people will come. But it doesn't happen in real world. You have to think about a problem. You have to fall in love with a problem, not with your solution, and be open to any solution that solves the problem in the most efficient manner. What does it mean? Find a problem that can be solved with your technology. And this problem has to be salient enough for people to line up in order to buy your solution. They should be willing to buy your prototype, even not final solution. So if you are solving a real problem, if it is not something good to have, but rather if you are solving a real world problem, people will come. Well, of course, an obvious example right now is with vaccines against COVID. It is not exactly fourth industrial revolution, but we are all waiting for it. And I'm ready to actually inject into myself anything that would end all of this nightmare. But so people are forgiven and there is no liability of newness if you are solving a real problem. The problem is that a lot of startups, particular engineering startups, they start with the technology. Well, I have this new material that is hydrophobic, for example, or whatever it is. And once I commercialize it, people will just buy it from me. No, you have to find people who actually need your hydrophobic material, and then they will line up to buy your solution. So the liability of newness is there. But if you concentrate, if you fall in love with problems, not with the solutions, you will get through it. By the way, you will also raise capital. So I hear a lot, I have this bright new idea, but nobody wants to give me money. Well, in most cases, it means that something is wrong with your idea. Venture capitalists are not here to discriminate against good ideas. They are here to make money. If they see a clear way that you will improve our world and make for them some money, they will line up to support your idea.
Excellent. We've got some more questions in the chat, but again, if anybody in the audience would like to put their hand up and ask a question vocally, please don't hesitate. But in the meantime, we've got a couple questions pertaining to the environment. So I want to ask this in two parts. The question about, what is the basic estimated impact of the fourth industrial revolution on climate change in general? And then more specifically, you talked about transparency and other aspects of what fourth industrial revolution technology might bring. How will that impact things like sustainable finance going forward?
Well, I believe we will be able to successfully fight the climate change, but I am a little bit skeptical about the ability of countries and nations to organize into something coherent. I would love to, but the history teaches us that usually this transnational thing does not work. But there is something that brings hope. As people are getting richer, as the living standards are raising, they start thinking more and more about environment. So if in emerging nations right now, if you don't have medicines or food for your children, you don't care that much about the environment, or most people don't care. But once the basic needs are satisfied, people start caring. And I believe China will meet their climate change goals, not so much because of international pressure, but simply because from pressure inside. Right now, if you go to Shanghai, on the phone application that shows you the temperature and weather outside, it also shows you the level of smoke, and so that you have to decide whether you have to wear a mask or not. As people are getting richer, they don't want to tolerate unclear air. So I am sure that as living standards increase, our footprint on the planet will decrease because richer people care about it. We can care about like Defend Alberta Parks right now movement or other things that are happening in Alberta precisely because we are well-off society. As more and more people are getting well-off, it will be resolved automatically thanks to market mechanisms. And yes,
Okay.
the Internet of Things and other things give us much more transparency. So my wife right now buys clothes that she wants them to be, for example, sustainably developed and so on. I don't fully get this idea yet, but eventually she will persuade me as well. So as we are getting richer, it will get better.
Okay, a little follow-up on that, which actually builds off of one of the questions in the chat as well. And it's about the growing disparity between the wealthiest and the poorest in the world. And how will the Industry 4.0 affect that gap?
Okay, there are good reasons why this happens. First, we have to understand that even the bottom percentile or the poorest people in our societies still live much better than the poorest people 30 years ago in the same society. So everyone is getting better off. But yes, the inequality is increasing. This is where we really have to think about how to make sure that the fruits or benefits of Fourth Industrial Revolution are improving everyone's lives. And as a person who is this right-wing oriented, I think this has to happen not because of some moral imperative, but rather for very pragmatic reasons. If you have 1% of richest people in the world and everyone else is in poverty, this society cannot exist. This is the recipe for revolution, and this revolution will actually make everyone worse off. In order to keep our society coherent, in order for us to be able to walk on the streets, we have to make sure that everyone is benefiting from revolution for these pragmatic reasons. How this can be done? Well, there are good policies that are about it. Policies about limiting monopoly on data that companies are accumulating, opening up access to data for smaller companies, or something that actually is very marvelous in the European Union that right now we don't notice yet, but it will become big. In European unions, all the banks are required to share the customer data with customers' approval with other companies, which creates a viable market for smaller fintech startups that can get information about creditworthiness of borrowers, for example, and then that can give financial services on much better terms that larger banks are. Fintech is here to stay. And so these are just examples of how we can handle this monopolization and trend towards monopolization. But we have to be very careful here. Google is monopolist for good reasons, or Facebook is a monopolist for good reasons, because they were much more efficient. They didn't have government support as most natural monopolies, for example, are having. This is the discussion to have in the society.
Interesting. We got time maybe for one more question. So if anybody in the audience would like to take this last opportunity to ask a question directly, and if not, I will follow up with a question of, again, you sort of talked a little bit about culture and attitude a little bit towards the end of your last answer, Oleks. And one of the questions asked about one of the challenges, and at least the question asker believes that in Canada, it's difficult to make that first sale. There seems to be a culture in Canada of waiting for others to be the first to try things in certain ways. And in general, just wondering if you could comment about what would make Canadians in general, assuming that hypothesis is true and valid, how can we encourage more early adoption by Canadians?
Well, this is another typical discussion in entrepreneurship, in entrepreneurial thinking, how to encourage the early adopters, how to move from early adopters, early enthusiasts, to a broader population. And the answer is here still, solve a real problem. If you solve a problem, people will come and people will give it a try. If you are a B2B company that offers industrial solutions, make sure that your solution can give your industrial customers competitive advantage. One of them will try and everyone else will see that this actually thinks this thing works. With end users, solve a real problem. There are always some 2% of people, innovators with end users who just like to try new technologies for the sake of new technology. But these are not going to be your target audience. Your target audience have to be early innovators who can see why your thing that you're producing will make their life better. And this will solve a problem. This is the only solution that I actually have. And most of the complaints about people not using the technology usually comes from innovators or inventors, actually, who have new technology that should improve something, for example, in oil and gas. But they don't really think about the problem that they are solving. Maybe the problem that they are solving is not that applicable or not on top of top 10 problems on the minds of oil and gas executives. Of course, you will not get them. We as people have limited capacity, and I personally hate trying new things because I have limited time and I have to spend it on more meaningful things. But if I see that something can actually make my life better, I will give it a try.
So the takeaway, the bottom line is to come up with an undeniable solution to a very meaningful problem.
Absolutely, and this is the recipe for success. And in this case, entrepreneurship is not a high-risk endeavor. It is actually as safe as doing corporate job if you have a problem that you are solving.
Right. Well, I think we're going to have to leave it there. I think this has been an interesting and fascinating and engaging discussion. I'd like to ask the audience to please look into your chat. We have a link to a survey that's rapidly rolling up the screen there. But if you just scroll up a little bit, you'll find a link to a survey. If you wouldn't mind immediately filling that out, we would be very appreciative of that. It helps us get more information about how well this event worked and what we can do better. I want to thank Oleks for his insights and sharing his strategic insights and thoughts with us today about the topic of the fourth industrial revolution and the impact of these meaningful technologies on business. I want to thank you, the audience, for participating in this discussion today. You know, you could spend your time anywhere, but you've chosen to spend it with us, and we're very grateful for that. I'd also would like to thank all the Haskeen staff that behind the scenes has worked very hard on bringing this event to you all. Their work is really appreciated. And I also want to mention that our next session will be coming up at noon. I'll be with Vijay Govarindajan. It's a 3-box solution. And also want to prime that there is going to be an opportunity for companies and organizations that want to take a deeper corporate innovation dive with VG that we'll be explaining and touching on in the follow-up emails to Corporate Innovation Day. So you'll be able to learn about that opportunity. And if it's a good fit for your organization, you can get in touch with us and we'll talk about that more.